My wife cheated with her boss and secretly transferred $250, $0 of our savings into his account right before we divorced. Then she claimed he's just a friend while suing me for half our house and retirement funds. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, completely shattered everything I believed about us. It all started with little things that I brushed off: missed calls, secretive texts, a strange distance in her eyes. But the moment I found out the truth, everything changed in an instant. I caught her in the act, and what I saw still haunts me. Let me back up a little. Lisa and I had been together for almost 10 years. We got married young, shared a nice house in the suburbs, and had a pretty good life. At least I thought so. She was beautiful, ambitious, and charming. But over the last year, she'd become more irritable, snapping at me over small things, canceling plans at the last minute, and always claiming she was busy with work. I figured work was stressful, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Then, about 3 weeks ago, I noticed a few odd things. Her phone started ringing late at night more often. She'd leave the room to take calls, whispering and acting paranoid. One night I saw a text pop up on her screen when she forgot to lock it, something from her boss, Mark, that read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Don't forget our plan." My stomach dropped. I knew Mark was her boss, but I'd always trusted that they were just colleagues. Seeing that message made my gut tighten, but I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to be sure. The real breaking point came last weekend. Lisa had been out with work friends, but she came home late, smelling like perfume I didn't recognize. She was defensive when I asked about it, brushing it off. But I'd been feeling uneasy, so I decided to do a little digging. I checked her bank account. I know, maybe that sounds invasive, but I was desperate for answers. That's when I saw it. An unusual transfer of $250, $0 from our joint savings account into an account I didn't recognize. I froze. That's half of our savings gone, and all I could think about was how she'd been hiding something. I searched the account number online. Turns out it was linked directly to Mark's bank account. That's when everything clicked. I remembered her always talking about how demanding her job was, how Mark was just a boss, and how she'd been working late more often. But this was beyond work. She had transferred our money into his account right before we filed for divorce. I confronted her the next morning. I told her I knew about the transfer, about the affair, everything. Her face went pale for a second, then she snapped back into her usual bitchy attitude, claiming I was crazy, that I was reading too much into her friendly relationship with Mark, and that I was just paranoid. She told me she was just trying to get ahead, that Mark was just a friend, and that I had no right to accuse her without proof. But I had the proof, clear as day. I felt sick, betrayed, and furious all at once. The betrayal wasn't just about the money, though that was a huge part of it. It was the fact that she lied so effortlessly, so convincingly, as if she didn't care about the damage she was doing to our marriage. I felt like a fool for trusting her all these years, for thinking we had a real connection. Instead, I was just a paycheck, a safe place for her to hide her secrets. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, disbelief. I'd never felt so betrayed in my life. I kept asking myself how she could do this, cheat on me with her boss, steal from us, then lie about it all. That's when I realized I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and take it. I started planning my next move, knowing that the world I thought I knew was crumbling, and I'd have to rebuild from the ground up. Do you want me to keep going? After confronting Lisa and seeing her dismissive attitude, I knew I couldn't just let this go. The anger simmered beneath the surface, but I also felt a deep sense of betrayal that cut so deep I didn't know if I'd ever recover. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, her lies, that smug look she gave me. When I accused her, it was like she was trying to gaslight me, make me doubt my own instincts. But I had proof now, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The next step was figuring out how to handle the financial mess she'd created. I started digging into our bank statements more thoroughly, trying to understand exactly what she'd done. The transfer of $250, $0 was a shock, but what also caught my eye was a series of small withdrawals and transfers in the weeks leading up to that. It was like she was slowly siphoning off our savings, making it less obvious until she pulled the big stunt. I felt sick thinking about how long she'd been planning this, how she'd been lying to me all along. I decided I needed legal advice. I contacted a divorce lawyer. Lisa's reaction to this was predictable. She called me paranoid, crazy, and accused me of trying to ruin her career. She claimed she was just working late, that Mark was just a friend, and that I was overreacting. But I had all the evidence now, and I knew I had to act. Fast, I didn't want her to drain any more of our money or try to cover her tracks. Meanwhile, I started monitoring her phone and emails. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed to know the extent of her betrayal. That's when I found out she'd been seeing Mark outside of work, secret dinners, hotel stays, the whole 9 yards. She lied about everything, and I'd been stupid enough to believe her. The final blow was when I found a series of explicit texts and photos between them, exchanged in the last few weeks. It was clear this wasn't just a fling. It was something she'd been planning, something she wanted to hide from me. I felt a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could she do this to me? To us? I had always been the one supporting her, working hard to give us a good life, while she was out screwing her boss and secretly stealing our savings. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how blind I'd been. But the truth was, I had ignored the little things, hoping she was just stressed or busy. Now I saw her for what she really was: selfish, manipulative, and utterly cold. The more I uncovered, the more I realized I had to fight back, not just for myself but for what was right. I knew I couldn't let her walk away with everything, especially not with the money she'd stolen. The plan was forming in my mind. I would fight for our house, our retirement funds, and most of all, I'd make sure she paid for her lies. I wasn't going to let her get away with betraying me, with destroying everything we'd built together. I also started gathering evidence to prove the transfer of our money into Mark's account. I contacted the bank, requested detailed statements, and prepared myself for the legal battle ahead. I knew Lisa was going to lie, spin her stories, and try to paint herself as the victim, but I had enough to counter her. I wanted her to see that I wasn't going to be a pushover, that I wasn't going to let her screw me over and walk away unscathed. The hardest part of all this was the emotional toll. I felt humiliated, angry, and deeply hurt. I kept replaying all the memories of us, the good times, the trust I thought we had. I kept asking myself what I did wrong, how I missed all the signs. But more than anything, I was determined not to let her ruin me. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, yes, but I was also furious. Furious enough to fight for what was mine and to make her regret the day she ever crossed me. I knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was ahead, and I had to stay strong. I was already planning my next steps, consulting with the lawyer, figuring out how to get my money back, and preparing for the inevitable courtroom showdown. I had to get my life back, and I was going to do whatever it took. Do you want me to keep going? The more I dug into her affairs, the more I realized how deeply she'd lied, not just to me but to everyone around her. Lisa always played the perfect wife, the hardworking professional, the loving mother. At least, that's what she wanted the world to see. But behind closed doors, she was manipulative, selfish, and utterly ruthless. She'd been planning her escape for months, maybe longer. The transfer of our savings was just the climax of her scheme, and I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. I spent hours on the phone with my lawyer trying to figure out my options. The moment I mentioned the transfer of $250, $0 into Mark's account, she got quiet. Her usual bitchy attitude turned defensive. She insisted she hadn't done anything wrong, that the money was a gift from her boss, and that I was paranoid and jealous. She spun stories about how Mark was just a mentor, how they'd never crossed a line, and that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But I knew better. I had the bank statements, the texts, the photos. I had everything I needed to prove she'd been lying from the start. I decided I'd serve her with divorce papers. I'd had enough of her lies, her cheating, and her theft. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about dignity. I wanted her to face the consequences of her actions. I also made plans to freeze her accounts and secure our assets. If she thought she could just walk away with our savings, she was dead wrong. I wasn't going to let her take everything she wanted while I got nothing. But I also knew I had to be strategic. Lisa was a bitchy, manipulative woman, and I didn't trust her to do the right thing. I decided to hire a private investigator. I wanted to catch her in the act, to get undeniable proof of her ongoing affair with Mark. I didn't want her to spin some sob story about how I was stalking her or trying to ruin her reputation. I needed clear, concrete evidence, especially if it came down to court. The pie was expensive, but it was worth every penny. Over the next few weeks, he followed her, recorded her secret meetings with Mark, and even caught them red-handed at a hotel. I couldn't believe how shameless she was. She'd been lying to my face for months, pretending to be this devoted wife and mother, while she was out screwing her boss and secretly stealing our savings. Seeing those photos and videos was like a punch to the gut, but at the same time, it confirmed everything I'd suspected. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, trying to manipulate friends and family to turn against me. She claimed I was crazy, possessive, and jealous, that I was trying to control her. She painted herself as the victim, as if I'd somehow betrayed her, but I knew the truth. I knew she'd been cheating, stealing, and lying right in front of everyone. The more she lied, the more I realized how much she hated being caught. Her bitchy attitude only got worse, especially when I confronted her with the evidence. One night she snapped. She yelled at me, called me insane, told me I was ruining her life, and accused me of destroying her reputation. She said she was just trying to do what's best for her, that she deserved happiness even if it meant betraying me. I looked her in the eyes and told her she was a liar, a thief, and a cheat, that I was done playing her game. I told her I'd take everything from her, her house, her money, her precious career, and make her pay for what she'd done. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt humiliated, betrayed, and furious. I kept asking myself how I had been so blind, how I had missed all the warning signs, but deep down I knew I couldn't let her get away with this, not after everything. I had to stand my ground, fight for what was mine, and make sure she faced justice. I was ready to go to court, to expose her lies, and to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I knew she'd try to spin more stories to manipulate the system, but I had the evidence. I had the truth, and I was determined to come out of this stronger, even if it meant tearing my life apart first. Do you want me to keep going? The day I finally filed for divorce, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief, because I was finally taking control, finally fighting back against her lies and betrayal. Dread, because I knew the fight was just beginning, and Lisa was not going to go down without a fight. She's a bitchy, manipulative woman, and I had no illusions about how she'd try to spin this whole thing to her advantage. When I served her the papers, her reaction was exactly what I expected. She screamed, called me crazy, jealous, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. She tried to turn our friends and family against me, claiming I was abusive, possessive, and delusional. It was all part of her game, trying to paint herself as the victim while she did everything possible to escape accountability. But I had the proof, the bank statements, the texts, the hotel videos. I knew she was lying, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Over the next few weeks, I concentrated on building my case. I worked with my lawyer to freeze her accounts, to get a court order to investigate the transfer of our savings. I also made sure to document everything: her manipulative texts, her lies to friends, her attempts to gaslight me. I knew she'd try to claim I was overstating things, that I was jealous or paranoid, but I had the evidence to shut her down. Meanwhile, she kept up her bitchy attitude. She was furious that I was fighting back, that I was exposing her lies. She accused me of trying to ruin her reputation, even though I was just trying to get back what she stole. She insisted she was just trying to do what's best for her, that Mark was just a friend, and that I was controlling. Her lies were relentless, but I knew the truth. I'd seen the proof. I'd caught her red-handed. One of the most shocking moments came when I discovered she'd secretly transferred the money into Mark's account just days before we filed for divorce. That was the final straw. I knew she had been planning this for a while, maybe even months. She was trying to cover her tracks, but she underestimated me. I had the bank records, the texts, and the hotel footage. She thought she could lie her way out of it, but she was wrong. I also started to realize how much this betrayal had affected me emotionally. I'd been blindsided, humiliated, and hurt on a level I'd never experienced before. The woman I loved, the woman I'd trusted with everything, was out screwing her boss and stealing from us. I'd built my whole life around her, and now I was left to pick up the pieces. But I refused to let her see me break. I had to stay strong for myself and for our future. The legal process moved fast. My lawyer filed motions to retrieve our money, to investigate the transfer, and to start divorce proceedings. Lisa's attempts to deny everything, to claim innocence, only made her look worse. Her bitchy attitude, her constant lies, none of it was working anymore. The court saw through her, and I could feel hope rising that I'd get justice. But even with all this happening, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, steal, and then act like everything was fine? The emotional scars ran deep, and I knew I'd carry them for a long time. Still, I had to keep moving forward. I had to fight for my rights, for my money, for my dignity. I wasn't going to let her destroy me completely, even if she tried. As I sat in that courtroom, watching her squirm under the weight of her lies, I realized something important. Betrayal hurts, but it also teaches you who your real enemies are. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply taking back what's yours and moving on. No matter how much she tried to manipulate, I had the truth. And in the end, that's all that mattered. Want me to keep going? The court hearing was a whirlwind. Lisa showed up with her usual bitchy smirk, acting like she hadn't done a thing wrong. She tried to spin her lies, claiming she was just trying to find herself, that Mark was just a friend, and that the transfer of our money was some kind of mistake. She looked at me with that condescending look, like she thought I was too stupid to see what was really happening, but I wasn't buying it. I had the evidence, and I made sure it was all laid out clearly. My lawyer presented the bank statements, the texts, the hotel footage. The judge looked over everything carefully. Lisa's face turned pale when confronted with her own messages, and her excuses crumbled under the weight of facts. She tried to deny the transfer, claiming it was a loan or gift, but the bank records proved otherwise. The court was not buying her bullshit. The judge ordered her to return the stolen $250, $0, and I also managed to get a court order to freeze her accounts. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Relief that I was finally getting some justice, but anger that I'd been so blindsided. For years, I'd believed in us, and now I saw her for what she really was, a manipulative, selfish woman who would do anything to get ahead, even if it meant destroying everything I cared about. The divorce process was brutal. Lisa fought tooth and nail over custody of the kids, her bitchy attitude surfacing more than ever. She claimed I was an unfit father just because I was angry and hurt, but I knew I had the upper hand. The court saw through her lies, especially when I presented the evidence of her affair and theft. She accused me of being possessive, but I knew she was just trying to distract from her own guilt. The worst part was seeing her try to turn the kids against me. She told them I was abusive, that I was trying to control her, and that I was a terrible father. But I stayed calm, kept my distance, and let the evidence speak for itself. I wanted my kids to see the truth, not her manipulative lies. And in the end, the court awarded me primary custody, with supervised visits for Lisa, mainly because of her ongoing affair and her dishonesty. Throughout all this, I felt a deep sense of betrayal. I kept wondering how I missed all the signs, how I was so blind to her true nature. But I also knew I had to focus on moving forward. I started working on rebuilding my life, focusing on my job, my kids, and trying to heal from this emotional wreckage. I realized that revenge wasn't just about money or getting even. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my sanity, and my future. Lisa's attempts to manipulate and gaslight me continued even after the court ruling. She kept calling, texting, trying to guilt-trip me into reconsidering. But I blocked her numbers. I knew she was desperate, and I didn't want her to drag me back into that mess. I had finally taken control, and I wasn't going to let her ruin what I was trying to rebuild. Looking back, I've learned a lot from all this. Betrayal cuts deep, but it also shows you who your real friends are, who truly cares. I've learned to trust my instincts, to not ignore the small signs, and to stand up for myself no matter what. The pain still lingers, but I know I'll come out stronger on the other side. Sometimes the only way to heal is to fight back, to take what's yours, and to never let anyone steal your peace again. Want me to finish up with the final part? In the aftermath of everything, I've come to realize just how much betrayal can shake your world. Lisa's lies, her affair, her theft, they tore me apart at first. I felt humiliated, angry, and broken. But over time, I started to see the bigger picture. I learned that sometimes the only way to truly move on is to face the pain head-on, take back what's rightfully yours, and rebuild from the ground up. That's what I did. The court proceedings finally wrapped up, and I got everything back: our house, the stolen money, and primary custody of the kids. Lisa's bitchy attitude didn't change much. She continued to lie and manipulate, but I learned to see through her. I realized that her happiness came at my expense, and I refused to be a victim anymore. The financial hit was hard, but it was nothing compared to the emotional toll of her betrayal. Still, I found strength I didn't know I had. I've since focused on healing, therapy, rebuilding my relationship with my kids, and working hard to move past the anger. I don't dwell on what could have been or what I lost. Instead, I think about what I've gained: clarity, resilience, and a renewed sense of self. I learned that trust is fragile, but I also learned that it's possible to rebuild your life stronger than before, even after being betrayed in the worst way. Looking back, I wish I had trusted my gut sooner. I wish I hadn't ignored the small signs: missed calls, secret texts, her sudden irritability. But I also know now that no one deserves to be cheated on or stolen from. No one should accept lies or manipulation. My advice to anyone in a similar situation: trust yourself. Gather evidence. Don't be afraid to stand up for yourself, even if it means losing what you thought was forever. Because in the end, your dignity and self-respect are worth more than any material thing or false love. Lisa's story is a harsh lesson, but it's also a wake-up call. Betrayal is painful, yes, but it can also teach you who you really are. It's made me stronger, more cautious, and more determined to protect what's mine. I've learned that revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about reclaiming your life and refusing to let someone else's betrayal define you. I'm still healing, still moving forward, but I know now that I'll come out the other side better, wiser, tougher, and more aware of what really matters. This experience has been one of the hardest chapters of my life, but it's also been a turning point. I refuse to let her define me anymore. I've taken back control, and I'm building a future where trust and honesty matter more than ever. No matter how deep the betrayal, there's always a way to recover if you're willing to fight for it. And I am.